Our next guest, we are all very excited to have here. I had to pinch myself when I saw him on the bill because I stalk all of his content on socials. It's phenomenal. It's always super based and very eloquently spoken. He is the host of What is Money podcast, which that is a question we all love. Founder and CEO of Parallax Digital, finance expert. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to give you Mr. Robert Breedlove.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me here today. We're going to talk about a topic that you're probably not surprised to hear me talk about, which is money. I wrote an essay, this was about 6 months ago, for a gold investment letter. And it was an accumulation of the answers to the question, what is money, I had gathered, either doing my own research or having guests on the podcast that had given me unique answers, or a lot of which came from Austrian economists as well. So what I thought I'd do today is go through some of these answers. I think it's a very fascinating question. Seems like it's very simple, right? We all use money every day. We think through money, and that we actually price things in money. We negotiate deals in money. We do economic planning and calculation in money. But I don't think we stop often enough to inquire about the actual nature of money itself, right? There's a very deep misunderstanding of what money is, where it comes from. Most people in the world today, as you probably know, think money is somehow a government creation, or the government, let's say the government is in charge of money, or is the origin point of money, whereas many of you probably know that's simply not the case. So it's been a philosophical question, almost. Like to answer this seemingly simple question, you end up in the deepest layers of inquiry, trying to understand, like what is value, what is accountability. I'm reading a book, or just finished reading a book on human consciousness, right? Like it's not something you think you would read about studying economics. So as I'm going through this, I'll try to drop in some quotes that are hopefully relevant from Mises and others about this topic. And I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll try to do some Q&A at the end. So I'll open with a quote from Carl Menger. He wrote an excellent book on the origins of money. It's written in kind of esoteric English, but I think it's one of the most important texts on where money actually comes from, how it actually emerges. And Carl Menger wrote, "The public's understanding of what money is and its origins has devolved to the point where the government and monetary authorities can now inflate with impunity, with the ultimate result to be the destruction of the division of labor, undoing all of mankind's progress to date," unquote. So again, I think Menger is echoing that intuition I have, that if people don't understand the most fundamental technology, the most universal technology in the world, which is money, it opens them up to a lot of other deceptions, many of which are perpetrated by the state. So, and the reason I think, again, the question's deceivingly simple. I saw this speech by a guy, I think it's David Wallace is his name, and he talked about this this little fable of two fish swimming in water. And he basically said there's two fish swimming along one day, and they pass an older fish along the way. And the older fish looks at the two younger fish, and he says, "Hey, boys, how's the water?" And the two younger fish just kind of look at him, and they nod, and they go on and swim past. And as the two younger fish are swimming past, one stops and looks at the other one and says, "What the hell is water?" So I thought this was kind of a telling tale about how we relate to money, and that we're so immersed in it. It's everywhere and nowhere. It's like this all-pervasive economic ether that we just, I don't know, we almost take it for granted, right? It's hidden in plain sight. So, and the other thing is, the water, we even call it liquidity, right? Like it's very much necessary for all human action and engagement at scale. Like, obviously, we can relate to one another in small circles of trust. We can use things like language. But you want to cooperate with 8 billion people, right? You want to have a global division of labor. That's simply not possible without money. So, I thought that was just a good way to put it. So with that, let's jump into some of these answers here. And I'll open this with a quote from Mises. So Mises wrote, and this is the most widely accepted definition of money in the Austrian school, that, quote, money is the universally used medium of exchange, nothing else, unquote. Now, a universal medium of exchange, what does that mean? It's a very kind of a potent, condensed phrase. What does he mean by that? And to start, I think you need to go back to the axiom of action itself, which is the base assumption that upholds all of Austrian economics, and that is man must act. Now, this is probably why Austrian economics can be so difficult, because so much is packed into each one of these words, and you have to really read the text and unpack what the author's trying to say. In man must act, what Mises is saying is that man, or humans, must purposefully use means to pursue ends. This is in everything that we do. This is actions, purposeful behavior. Now, he would only distinguish non-purposeful behavior, which he just calls behavior, versus action, as something like a reflexive behavior. So if the doctor taps your knee with a little hammer and your leg kicks out, that's not purposeful action, right? That's not you using means to pursue ends. That's a biological, innate response. Now, the reason it's an axiomatic assumption, axiom meaning like an irrefutable, incontrovertible base assumption for the entire knowledge system, is because you cannot argue against it. It's impossible to argue against the axiom of action. Why? Because if you mount an argument against the axiom of action and you try to make the claim that man does not need to purposefully use means to pursue ends, you are in fact using the argument as a means to the end of trying to refute the axiom of action. Did that land with everybody? I know it's a little complicated. You can't, it's a natural law. It's as real as gravity. It's as fruitless as trying to argue against the law of gravity. That's a great example. But this takes, obviously it took us many thousands of years to get to this point, this level of understanding. So action, again, this irrefutable thing we're all doing all the time. We all have purposes, aims. We're selecting from all the possible means that are available to us to pursue those ends. We're doing it all the time. I'm doing it right now, right? Using this as a means to the end. I'm using this computer, this text that I wrote, this microphone. What are our ends? What are we trying to do? Well, Mises says we're typically trying to remove felt uneasiness, which I like to think of as alleviating anxiety, right? The world's a very crazy place. There's a lot of uncertainty. We've all got to eat. We need shelter. We want security. The purpose is that we select for ourselves tend to be aimed at satisfying those desires for security, hunger, shelter, love, etc., all of these things. So what we're really trying to do is satisfy wants, right? We're trying to satisfy human wants, ourselves and others. But in this pursuit, we run into a problem. And the problem is that each one of us individually is limited, right? We're limited in terms of our time on earth. We're limited in terms of our skill set. We're limited in terms of the things that we know. We're just limited, right? It's just a hard fact of reality. So if we were going to try and do everything ourselves, that would be a problem, right? If I had to grow the cotton for my shirt and weave my shirt and sew my pants and make my shoes and grow my food and build my house, I would spend one lifetime maybe getting those things done. So what do? Well, we create these systems of interdependency, right? Economics and trade. This is the division of labor. We overcome our individual limitation by engaging in trade with one another. And now when you get into this system, you're now entering a world in which I and you can just focus on one thing that you're really good at, or a few things. And then you can provide that to the world, right? You can render those services or favors to the world. Everyone else in the world is doing the same thing. They're doing what they're best at, and you're benefiting from the fruits of their labor, right? So I get to buy the nice Italian shoes. I don't know how to make Italian shoes, all right? That's only possible in a market economy. So this, and this is a natural human thing too, right? Like, we're naturally wired to cooperate with one another. We overcome this limitation that we naturally have through interdependent relationships. Now, that's also what would be called the division of labor, right? That we are actually dividing the labor that needs to be done to satisfy human wants. We divide it into smaller parts so that we accomplish greater results with less efforts. And so if you've ever heard the old phrase, many hands make light work, that's basically what we're doing when we trade with one another. And so to do that, all right, we have to engage in this process of exchange, and we also have to have this institution of private property. And private property, in my opinion, it's like the most important thing in economics. I don't think there's any alternative to it whatsoever. I think it's rooted in just the principle of justice itself. If we were to name justice as people getting what they deserve, private property is very simply that, right? It's the things of value that you create, the work that you do, you enjoy the rights to the fruits of those labor. You're also responsible for it, right? If I build the podium, if I bring the materials and I bring the time and the know-how and I build it, I can trade it, I can use it, I can burn it, I can do whatever I want with it, but I'm also responsible for maintaining it, for taking care of it. So to have a division of labor, you have to have a world in which people keep the value that they themselves create. This is what the incentive is to actually go out and render favors to other people and receive favors in return. So in that world, we're exchanging with one another. Everyone keeps what they earn. We have to have a medium of exchange, right? We don't always have whatever I'm good at does not exactly match what you're good at, so we can just facilitate a barter transaction. There has to be a medium that we all trade into and can trade out of, right? And it's not something that needs to be consciously constructed, which we'll get into in a moment. It's something that emerges naturally. So what is money, right? Money is the universal medium of exchange. Many things are tradable, but money is the most tradable thing, or the most saleable thing. And this is directly related to the free market. So again, kind of an assumption built into Austrian economics. All individuals prefer wealth over poverty, given a choice, obviously. Free markets, then, with social cooperation occurring under the institution of private property, is critical for that. It's the only way we can optimize the satisfaction of human wants in aggregate. It's the way we solve the most problems with the least amount of effort. And so, as the source of virtually all want satisfaction, which we're doing through exchange, the free market represents a vast, interconnected constellation of human productive energies and ingenuities. We're like wiring all of our minds and our bodies together into one big socioeconomic organism. And in that organism, we each benefit. So it's like the ultimate win-win or the ultimate positive-sum game. So, private property is important, free market's important. What's another answer to the question, what is money? And I'll open with a quote here from Erich Fromm, who wrote that, quote, "Man does not only sell commodities, he sells himself and feels himself to be a commodity," unquote. And another one from Carl Menger, who wrote that the commodities, which under given local and time relations are most liquid, have become money, unquote. So we figure this out, that we need one another. We need one another's skills, expertise, time, know-how, etc., so that we can all benefit. Like you doing what you do best, and I doing what I do best, and us trading is a net benefit to everyone. We figure that out. So we start trading, right? Goods and services start to be exchanged among people. This has happened in every society that has ever existed. So how does money come into the equation, right? It's not like someone just decided one day, oh, I'm going to create this thing called money, and then I'll go out and provide this service to people. Again, Carl Minger's book explains it well, but the visualization I have of this is there are certain goods and services that are going to be less desirable and therefore less tradable. This might be something super niche like telescopes, perhaps. And there are other goods and services that are more universally desirable, that more people tend to want and are therefore more tradable. Something like water, right? All of us need to drink water to survive, so that tends to be something that's more marketable. So this definition of money that again comes through Minger's work is that money is the most marketable good in the free market. So if you imagine in the core of this, I have this trade flow sphere visualized, where those goods that don't trade often are at the core. They're illiquid assets like telescopes, like I mentioned. And then as you ascend that sphere, each asset is steadily more tradable, more desirable, more liquid assets near the surface. So goods exhibit different degrees of moneyness as they are closer to the surface. So nearer the core, you have less moneyness. Higher, closer to the surface of this imaginary sphere, is more moneyness. The good at the surface, there has to be one, right? This is just a rank-ordered ordinal stack. There has to be one thing that exhibits more moneyness than anything else. That most marketable or tradable or exchangeable or liquid good is money. That's how money emerges, is that people are trading goods and services with one another. They're trying to get to the thing that they ultimately desire, right? I may have traded telescopes for oranges, but what I really want is water. That pushes one good to the surface that becomes the most liquid or most marketable good, and that is money. That's how it comes to be. There's no government interaction here. It's just humans left to their own devices, trading with one another. Something becomes most tradable. That is money. That is the most marketable good. And I would show you a picture if I had it here, but that's basically, I tried to describe it like that. And so Mises has a great quote on this, actually. This is a game theoretic process, by the way. And as Mises wrote about this progression towards one money, right, there has to be, again, it's ordinal. You wouldn't expect to have multiple monies in a single economy. You actually can't, because something's going to be more tradable, more widely demanded than everything else. That thing is money. So it's a winner-take-all market dynamic. Mises writes, quote, "An inevitable tendency for the less marketable of a series of goods used as a media of exchange to be one by one rejected until at last only a single commodity remained, which was universally employed as a medium of exchange, in a word, money," unquote. So that's it, right? It's a bottom-up, emergent economic phenomena, a social institution, a technology, a marketable good, whatever you want to call this thing. It is not decreed by government into existence. And that's a key point, I think, for helping people overcome the common misconception of money today. And now when we say that money is the most marketable good, in that way, it is also the highest expression of the free market itself, right? The free market, again, is this nexus of all of our skills and ingenuities. But what is the outcome of that is we're increasing our productivity, we're accumulating more capital, we're solving more problems per unit of effort, per hour of effort. But the manifestation of that is money, like the purchasing power of money growing over time. We get this storehouse for wealth or productivity. And it's a amazing tool, right? If you think about it, we have this instrument of just freedom in our pockets. Like, okay, all these humans are producing all these different things all over the world. I don't need to go through any complex sequence of exchanges or negotiations to get the things. All you have to do is save money, and then you can go and use the money to acquire the things that you want in the market. It's a mind-bending tool for social cooperation. It's like a universal language, right? As the old saying goes, don't let your money talk for you. If you just go and bring money into a deal or whatever it is, that speaks louder than words ever can. So it's the key point there, it's an emergent property of interpersonal exchange. It's what happens when people are left alone. It has nothing to do with the government or central banks, despite what they may say. Okay, another definition of money, and this one relates to value. Money is a device for moving value across space and time. And I'll give you a few quotes here too. First one is from Mises, quote, "Value is not intrinsic. It is not in things. It is within us. It is the way in which man reacts to the conditions of his environment," unquote. So, value is subjective. This was one of the revolutions in the mid-1800s of Austrian economists. Prior to that, there was the notion that value was perhaps objective. The Marxist labor theory of value, I think, actually believed that there were utils, like an elementary particle in the universe, like a proton or a neutron, but this one's called a util. So this podium might have 70 utils, maybe this has 670 utils, and the ratio of the utils between these two objects determine their market price. Clearly total bullshit, excuse my French, but it took, again, a lot of human cognitive effort to realize that actually there's no utils, there's no value independent of the valuer, right? It's subjective, it's subjectively ascribed and imputed by us, humans. And it's ordinal, right? This is first, I prefer this thing first, this thing second, this thing third. There's not, when we had the concept of utils, these were cardinal numbers that you could actually assign a number to it and perform computation on it. That's not the case with ordinal numbers. This is more like your friend, right? You have a first best friend, a second best friend, a third best friend. It wouldn't make any sense to say, I have a 68-point best friend, a 42-point best friend, and you can it just doesn't make any sense. So, value is subjective, right? It's based on our preferences. Anything that, again, as we have aims, right? I'm using means to pursue ends. The ends are my aim. Anything that accelerates me on the course of satisfying my aim is valuable to me, right? This podium is holding the laptop, which is giving me some notes so I can attain this aim of doing this presentation with you. This is valuable to me. This is rendering value to me, hopefully to you as well. Anything that is irrelevant to that pursuit, you know, the building down the street right now doesn't really have a lot to do with this presentation. That's valueless to me right now in my current aim, right? It's very valuable to the proprietors that are running the hotel or whatever it is down there, but not to me. And anything that impedes me from pursuing this aim would be anti-valuable or value destructive, something like that. It can never, as Mises told us, value is not intrinsic in anything. There are no utils. It's in how we're responding to the conditions of our environment. And it's always subjective. So I think the easiest, maybe most condensed, succinct way to say it is wants determine value. It's like whatever you want, that's what you value. The things that help you get closer to what you want in time or space are valuable. Things that block you are anti-valuable. Things that are irrelevant are valueless. Okay. Now that said, if value is purely subjective, it's in my response to the conditions of my environment. how can I say that money is a device for moving value across space and time if value is subjective, right? That doesn't quite make sense. How do you move subjective value across time and space? So the common thread here, and this gets back to the division of labor in the free market, is that everything that we want, like pretty much every problem that we want to solve, involves other human beings, involves their efforts, involves their input, even raw land, right? If it's just raw land, untouched, nothing developed on it, to acquire that land, to buy it, it takes hands to sell it, right? There has to be someone enforcing the property right, handling the deed, et cetera, doing the transaction, escrow, all of these things, right? Even land takes hands to sell. So the through line between all of us pursuing our wants and our aims is that we tend to need other people to help us solve our problems. And so, again, money is the instrument commanding maximum marketability. It's giving us the widest choice of inputs from others. By holding money, I have the capacity to acquire the widest set of skills, knowledge, know-how, goods, services, etc. When I trade a good for money, the seller is actually taking possession of a token, right? When they're taking possession of money that can be traded for any other good in the marketplace, and as actors seek to satisfy their wants through trade, they're eyeing the money held by the seller. And so this is, because it's a claim on all of the things, right? It's what's most likely to be able to accelerate you on the course of satisfying your aim. So it's not, maybe technically money doesn't store value, because value is just purely subjective, although we commonly say this. But it's the thing that has the highest probability of accelerating you on your aim from where you are to where you want to be. And so it's the highest probability thing of being perceived as valuable for others in pursuit of their own want satisfactions. So again, there's this social consensus occurring here that money is the thing with the highest probability of quote-unquote holding value across space and time. So when you receive, and this is to disambiguate here, when you spend or receive money, right, you're actually moving it across space. You're moving it from your hands into the hands of someone else. Saving money is moving value across time or holding purchasing power across time. So when I say that it's useful, a device for moving value across space and time, that's what I mean. In the medium of exchange function, you can move it across space. In the store of value function, you're moving it across time. So again, this is not precisely correct in that it's not technically moving value, but it's the thing that has the highest probability of being valuable over time. Okay, I just saw that I've got a sign for 5 minutes. I didn't get through all of my answers here to the question. I'm being long-winded as usual. Maybe I'll mention one more here, just real quick. If you guys have seen the podcast, the first series I did was with Michael Saylor, and this is actually where I got this answer, which is that money is the highest form of energy that human beings can channel. And there's a quote here by Mises again, I used to back this up. Quote, "Man works in using his forces and abilities as a means for the removal of uneasiness and in substituting purposeful exploitation of his vital energy for the spontaneous and carefree discharge of his faculties and nerve tensions," unquote. And another one by Mises. Quote, "There is an impulse inwrought in all living beings that directs them toward the assimilation of matter that preserves, renews, and strengthens their vital energy. The imminence of acting man is manifesting in the fact that he consciously and purposefully aims at maintaining and enhancing his vitality," unquote. So, quick answer here, I would say check out the Saylor series for the longer version of this, but essentially, human beings have to, in pursuing the satisfaction of our wants, we have to employ energy. This is, even right now, right, we all have a metabolism. We're using food as energy. We have to move energy over time to do anything whatsoever. Money is the highest form of energy humans can channel because it can be used to acquire any other form of energy the marketplace can produce, right? Whether this is kinetic energy, chemical energy, gravitational energy, etc. Money is this strange social construct that we can use to represent energy in terms of prices, but then also transact for any form of energy that our specific goal-oriented path may demand. Okay, I hope that was educational, and I hope you guys found it valuable. There are many, many more answers to this. I think I have a document with about 50 total answers. We talk about it a lot on the show. I try to do my best to write about it. I can point you to where this essay is published if you would like to read it. Thank you so much for hearing me out.